Hello, Lady B, can you hear me? Are we live? Okay. Seems to be good. Okay.
I hope so.
Check hello. Lady B. Are you guys there? Is there... Am I not expected? Was everybody taking the weekend off and I didn't get the memo? Is that what happened? Just so you know, guys. Oh, that's a little better. Hey, hi, Donna. Thank you very much. Happy 4th of July. Okay, I think everything's a little better now. But still not getting. We're supposed to start up any second now from Chicago. I can't hear. I cannot hear B. I'm glad you guys can hear me. But I can't hear Chicago. I heard commercials a moment ago, so there is audio coming my way. Just so you guys know in Chicago. So I obviously can start talking right away, and then you guys can pop in. Is there an echo? Oh. Why would there be an echo? Two sources. How about this? Oh, because it's got an audio source on it. That guy. Go. Check. Hey, did that get rid of the echo, guys? Seems to have. Good. Okay. I don't know why the channel's got some sort of weird. Okay, not here in Chicago still, but they can hear me, so I'm assuming we're going live right now because we've just come out of the break. It's the House Parks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. I believe I am live right now. We will figure out in just a moment. Johnny Million is in studio with us. You guys can probably hear him as well. Johnny, give him a woohoo if you can hear him. And we'll know if you're going out over the airwaves at this point. I'm broadcasting from Cleveland, so this could be entirely my fault. No offense to Cleveland. It's just... Not the hottest Wi-Fi spot in the world. Although I have to admit I've had worse. We're going to talk a lot today about the potential or lack thereof of the Republican healthcare bill. We're going to talk about the new report coming out that one of Flynn's operatives admitted to not only shopping around the Clinton emails, or at least money to get them found, to 5 different hackers, 2 of them Russian, admitting to it and using as his sales pitch to these hackers that he knows Mike Flynn and works with Mike Flynn. So there's no reason to believe that this particular source in that particular detail dealing with Mike Flynn has any reason to not be telling the truth, and that Flynn could, I guess, essentially mitigate the damage by admitting to it himself. So part of the reason why he flipped or rolled, we shall see as that plays out. But the Peter Smith angle.
Check 1, 2.
Hey, it's Johnny. I can hear you.
Woo!
I love it. Look at that.
Swore.
We pushed a button and magic happened. I'm so excited. How are you?
But I hear a big echo.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right. Well, I'm worth it. I'm just saying. Hearing me twice is a joy.
No, the echo is purely from me.
Oh, okay. It's you. Okay. Well, then zero blame.
I sound pretty good. I sound pretty darn good.
Got kind of an Elvis-y thing going on, like a slapback, you know?
I wish. It's more like a Pink Floyd.
Oh, yeah. That's severe. That's a severe.
Is there anybody in there?
Well, at the very least, you can hear me. Well, then until we can solve that. Is there anyone home?
I'll stop now.
That's okay. So, well, then let's. I'll keep talking about the 3 main points, and I think you've been able to hear me up to this point, correct? Just so I know.
Yep.
Good. Okay, so obviously the Mika Brzezinski, Joe Scarborough tweet that went out this week unpacks as unseemly and disgusting, gross, very indicative of why this man has no friends. He only has sycophants and leeches, and effectively it explains the leaky White House at this point. Because the minute he thinks you're not loyal to him or you turn in any way, he'll cut loose and just tell everything he possibly has about you, which is one of the other reasons why he might fear Russian blackmail so badly, is because he knows how he would treat the same circumstance. So if he turns on Putin at all, without, by the way, permission from Putin to do so, because let's be abundantly clear, Putin and his training in the KGB, FSB, Russian intelligence world is aware that a certain amount of counter programming has value. Anybody who's ever read a spy novel or American history knows this, and so it wouldn't be surprising at all that Putin would give Trump the go-ahead at one point to go, yeah, you can just kind of roughly mention us, but then move on quickly. Don't make a big deal of it, but just so we can clear the, you never say a bad word. So you've got permission to say, like 4 bad words, okay? I give you 4. If you go 5, I drop the pee-pee bomb, but 4 bad words, okay? And then we'll go back to the business of dividing up Syria between the two of us by pretending to have difficulties there, right? So, and did I lose you, or are you still there, Johnny? I'm always worried. Oh, I have lost you. That's good. I don't hear you right now. So they're probably trying to fix the echo. That being said, ultimately his inability to slam any element of Putin's personality or his political machinations or his direct linkage to messing with our election and throwing a bag over the head of one of his own intelligence officers, dragging him out of the room, and he hasn't been seen since. There is, in none of those moments has this president said, yeah, that's concerning. Yeah, that's a problem. Yeah, that's not how democracies of the world's work, and we certainly do not advocate that behavior, and we certainly view our own elections as sacrosanct. And if you mess with them, you mess with us, because if there is a singular thing that our soldiers fight and die for, it's the freedom to choose our own government and manage our own freedoms through a representative government. The ability to vote and have a say. And so we're not going to let you, in retrospect, undermine the sacrifice of soldiers and military people throughout history simply because you want to mess with our election because you have financial gain from it. And that's essentially what this is. Listen, one of the big bones I have to pick with the fringe left right now is that they're trying to write off the Trump-Russia scandal as a new Red Scare. And again, the Red Scare had to do with communism. There was an ideology. It wasn't so much that America was going to become Russia, but that communism, which was it had found a seat in Russia and China, would eventually make its way to the United States. And that the Red Scare was communism making its creep across the United States, not Russian oligarchs controlling our government. Because quite frankly, the people who used to fight Russia the most couldn't be happier if we had a more oligarchical system than we already do. So the irony that the Republicans that used to defend us against the Russians because of communism are, when it comes to income inequality or heads of industry running roughshod over the environmental safety of citizens, they kind of shrug it off, quite frankly. So this idea that it's a Red Scare is absurd. What it is creeping oligarchy, which you'd think, like, especially supporters of Bernie, the Occupy movement, independents who care very deeply about, banksters, as Tom Hartman likes to say, and people manipulating our monetary system in a way to basically gut the financial security of the United States, move money to the Cayman Islands, never pay taxes on it, take advantage of our legal and infrastructure, our legal system, our infrastructure, our copyright laws, our patent laws, all the protections that are involved in that, and then not pay their fair share of housing their company here and all that kind of stuff. If that concerned you, then the real concern of Russian intervention is that Russia is a creeping oligarchy with no reins whatsoever. And that is the biggest concern of Russia having its way with this president, that Putin and Trump being aligned in any way is an exempt. I mean, don't get me started on the idea that people like Edward Snowden and stuff were tweeting leading up to the election. The choice in the election is between Donald Trump and Goldman Sachs. The idea that Hillary Clinton's going to fill up her cabinet with Goldman Sachs people or industry heads who are now in, and then Trump does all the things that Hillary Clinton was going to do, roughshod. Trump is absolutely doing that. And there seems to be no moment where any of these folks are having a reality check on themselves. That they're, that Trump is doing all the things to his own supporters and to independents and people who couldn't bring themselves to vote for Hillary, that crowd, all the things they warned us about, that Hillary would do, and that Trump was the better choice. Trump is doing with zero checks. I mean, you could argue that if no matter what you think of Hillary Clinton, with her in office, the Democratic Party and Democrats themselves would have an ability to check that behavior, even if just for show. Even if that an effort to check that behavior. That the potential down ballot damage if she filled her cabinet with Goldman Sachs people would have kept her from doing it writ large. And when it comes to Donald Trump, that is precisely what he's doing. And none of the people who, had these warnings about Hillary Clinton's, links with Wall Street seem to have any sense of irony about the circumstance we find ourselves in with Donald Trump's cabinet choices, his choice of people to handle these issues, and the Republican Party's refusal, even in light of his most disgusting tweets, his most disgusting behaviors, to check those elements, to check his cabinet choices, to say, you know what, the blue collar working people of this country, the white working class that shepherded him into the office, were counting on him to put people in charge who had an idea about what the suffering that they were going through. And, a lot of us are going through an I told you so moment because it seemed abundantly obvious. But the carrier jobs last week just announcing that all the carrier jobs he said were staying are going, period. Let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to hopefully get our audio sorted out so Johnny and I can talk freely. We will talk to you right after the break. It's the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide. Go to halsparks.tv to watch it on the YouTube channel and or infotainmentwars.com because we have the documents. And I'll be back right after this.
Maybe I'm foolish, maybe I'm blind, thinking I can see through this and see what's behind. Got no way to prove it, so maybe I'm lying. But I'm only human after all. I'm only human after all. Don't put your blame on me. Don't put your blame on me.
So I'm still not hearing Johnny coming this way. Are you currently trying to solve the Chicago? Are you trying to solve the echo? Because there's no audio loop when he's speaking on my end, just so you know.
Businesses that support us. You'll find many great resources like Chicago Car Biz. They provide auto accessories such as front and rear parking sensors, rear backup cameras, and blind spot detection systems. Chicago Car Biz and many other great local companies are on the sponsors page at WCPT820.com under the community tab. We all need to work together and help each other because together we will win.
The following update is for drivers who pay too much for car insurance due to DUIs, DWIs, tickets, or anything else. Our company specializes in low-cost SR22 auto insurance. We know that mistakes happen and offer free quotes for very affordable auto insurance meant specifically for you, the overpaying high-risk driver. The quote is free, and we'll handle the filing so you can start saving money. Call 800-749-2984. 800-749-2984.
Try this. Try this. And try this. I'm just rewiring real quick. One moment.
Are you concerned about your heart health? Are you interested in healthy brain function? What about joint comfort and energy? Well, if you answered yes to any of these questions, we want to send you a free bottle of Krill Omega 50 Plus now.
Hal, can you hear me now?
Plus, with CoQ10 combines krill oil with fish oil in one tiny pill. And this little pill delivers big health benefits to your heart, your joints, your arteries, and brain. And with CoQ10, you'll enjoy extra energy too. Best of all, you can get a free bottle of Krill Omega 50 Plus with CoQ10 today. Just pay for shipping. Call right now and request your free bottle. Dial 1-800-780.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
That's 1-800.
Can you hear?
01392. 1-800-780.
You can hear me now, right?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Do you hear my echo?
No.
Okay.
Ever so slightly, but it sounds like it's from the studio.
Daughter's bangs
talkback mic.
Do you A, line things up a centimeter from her hairline?
So I'm gonna try.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
So hot right now. Everyone's wearing
Any echoes now?
that basketball player and that other basketball player.
B, get spiritual.
Any echo?
Nope.
Go. A reflection could never
Everything's good?
capture our true selves.
No echo.
Beauty is within.
C, look on the bright side.
Less time blow drying, more time texting.
Or
See,
D,
I see
empathy.
metered echo on my side,
You really don't have
but I don't know why.
Twinsies.
There's no source going into
kinda
it.
love it.
If that makes any sense.
As a parent, there are no perfect answers.
We got 15 seconds.
The perfect
Okay.
parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you
Disconnecting and
just the
reconnecting
same.
just in case.
For
it's-
more
yeah,
information on how you...
It's always screwy.
The
This
U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
Allow you to see in what you believe.
Try this instead.
Sparks radio program, mega worldwide on Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT.
Hey, it's Hal Sparks. Welcome back to the show. Audio-wise, we good? Chicago? Can you hear me? Everything all right?
No, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. You sound terrific. You sound lovely.
Yeah, and I don't even think I hear an echo.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Oh, wow. Lady B looks like she's about to kill somebody.
Well, right now I've simplified everything on my end just in case it's over here, so we should be all right in the meantime. So I'm literally hand holding my little microphone for our transmitter, and we'll make it happen piece by piece. It's what I'm willing to do so I can have Johnny be part of this conversation. Okay, so let's talk for a second about the Mika Brzezinski, Joe Scarborough business, because it's the most salacious and grotesque. I think it's the grossest thing he's actually tweeted about someone. I mean, it's like one thing to, his stuff about Rosie O'Donnell, like, to some degree, she's a comedian, so I feel like she's more on on a footing to give as good as she gets. She's a smart woman. Not that Mika isn't, but as a comedian and a comedic actress, Rosie's, I just think, tougher around the gills than most people. So I never really worried that what he was throwing her way would do emotional damage to her. There's always the ancillary problem. There's always the chance that somebody will hear what he's saying to her and think that judgment applies to them. Which is the rough part of any of that stuff. I've always had an issue with, you may think that, well, I make fun of everybody, so I can make fun of whomever I want to, and that person could just take it because that's their thing, and you don't realize that, oh yeah, that's true. However, whatever you say to those people, if someone overhears it that's not as strong, who's in that same emotional situation, their reaction is very different. And and that's it's sort of the for the children argument, but I still think a valuable one, if that makes sense.
It does.
Yeah. So the question I have is that, you saw when it came out, that his tweets, I'm guessing.
Yeah. I actually kind of pay attention to Morning Joe, and the whole thing just made me super sad. Right.
Because it's essentially, it's grotesque for one. This idea that on a couple of levels. One is making fun of someone who, making fun of someone for having a facelift is fodder that happens in comedic circles. But making fun of them because they were bleeding from a facelift is a very specific dig.
Yeah.
That's particularly grotesque. And he has a problem with women bleeding, apparently. Women in blood seems to be...
Just the way that whole thing compounded. It's like, oh yeah, he did that with Megyn Kelly too.
Yeah. This is a running theme with him, and I'm always curious at when what that points to in someone's psychology. That's their issue. He's obviously got an issue with fatherhood as a present father. He's got an issue with what women are supposed to do in the house, raising babies and changing diapers and all that stuff is women's work. As he told Howard Stern repeatedly. But they say a lot of people who are with rigid thinking or who are sort of violent in their thinking have what's called a high disgust level. That they are easily disgusted by things. They're more sensitive to things that the rest of us go, oh, that's uncomfortable, but big deal, and we move on. They have this they'll think back to stuff, or they have especially it's a fear-based reaction to anything that is uncomfortable to them, and I think curly Q French style furniture is arguably disgusting. Always had a weird thing with it. I also think lace is a little creepy. That's always been one of my things. It feels funny. I don't like it. But I don't wig about it. It's just kind of like, I don't like that. But his recurring theme about the sort of grossness about that, I think speaks volumes about who he is. Now the odd thing is that I don't know how you have a friend. I don't anymore. If that's how you operate, the minute you're disloyal with me, or I perceive you to be disloyal.
And they used to be friends.
Yeah. Well, I had my problems with Morning Joe because they were carrying carrying water for him during that whole process. And I found it very disturbing. Like a lot of people, I guess. That he in some way, Joe and they would let him basically broadcast from his bathrobe. Yeah. And then, and now there's this like he's crazy. He's lost his mind. Like you didn't see that coming.
You didn't see that coming.
You for some reason. This surprises you in some way. Like I just don't. I don't buy it as a defense.
It's the whole it doesn't matter until it happens to me thing on the far right of, you know, I won't fight for LGBT rights until my daughter comes out as gay, or I won't work on gun laws until somebody I know gets shot. It's always somebody else's problem until it's their problem.
Yeah, it's only in my backyard. Only in my backyard.
Right.
Yeah, go ahead.
I've seen a couple of different articles, and I remember this from during the Romney-Obama election. Is I don't know how to convince you to care for other people.
Yeah. Exactly. Interestingly enough, I will say this. And this hits us where we belong. Ted Nugent coming out and saying we need to be, his wife told him to tone down the violent rhetoric. And the fact that it took somebody shooting some Republicans to finally bring him around is one thing. But I had a moment, and I think, you as somebody who used to be a damn Yankees and Ted Nugent fan back in the day before he went this direction. I welcomed it. You know, as much as I don't approve of what he did, and I don't think people should just get off easy. I do think if people are willing to come home and finally go, you know what, I'll speak openly about my political beliefs, but I'm going to stop the rhetoric because it's violent. Then
I didn't even know that he did that.
Yeah, he came out and said, his wife talked to him and said, no, you need to, after the shooter at the baseball field, you need to stop talking about guns as if it's no big deal, and using this violent rhetoric, because you can't throw stones if you're blaming them for it.
Using his machine gun on Obama.
Yeah, he said suck on his machine gun. He told saying basically Hillary should sit on his, like it was violent stuff. But again, I do find that detestable. But the minute you're willing to realize it was detestable and go, you know what, I'm not going to do that. Even if you still disagree politically. I'm like, okay, cool. Let's start from square one. I think that's what peace accords are about. If you're willing to stop the violence today, there has to be a point of forgiveness to start moving forward. Otherwise, we end up with effectively a political version of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict in this country. Never a ratchet down. Let's take a break. We'll come back. We'll have a little bit about this. The Russian Peter Smith Flynn story. You know about that, Johnny?
Yeah, I've heard a little bit about it. About how it's all coming around.
Yeah. So Flynn is singing like a bird, and this is where no collusion becomes some collusion. Well, collusion isn't a crime. You know what? It's collusion. Is going
and then they compare it to something that you think that somebody else did that was worse.
Right.
Was it collusion when they did blah blah blah?
Yeah. Yeah, they worked with them on the space station, so I can't collude with them to wreck our elections. What's the difference? We'll be back. It's South Park's radio program, Mega Worldwide. Don't.
I've been reading books of old, the legends and the myths, Achilles and his gold.
I don't know.
Spider-Man's control, Batman with his fear.
What's that? Oh.
The Bill Press Show. Until Donald Trump fired him a month earlier, was the chief law enforcement officer of the United States, Mr. Straight Arrow. And James Comey testified
is the echo gone now, guys?
That he could not trust the president of the United States.
I'm talking about
I don't hear it.
Okay,
yeah, no, I'm talking to the chat room now because I was
never allowed to be alone with him again.
Bill Press, weekday mornings at 6 a.m. on WCPT 820.
The human voice.
Okay.
It can be sweet as music, powerful as thunder,
and so, my fellow Americans,
cheerful as laughter. But for millions of people, It can also be a sign of COPD. This serious lung disease can make it so hard to breathe, you often can't catch a breath or finish a sentence, let alone carry a tune. And many who have COPD don't even know it. That's where your voice comes in. If you think you or a loved one have symptoms, talk with a healthcare provider. Early diagnosis can mean better treatments and quality of life. Join us in raising our voice.
Lady B, can you stop the commercial feed my way, or are we playing with fire to?
I don't think there's no way I can do it unless I reset the board again.
No problem. Okay.
Lowe's. If you own life
I'll
insurance
manage.
or
I'll
thinking
manage.
of buying any, why spend more than you do?
That's okay.
Since
That's
1986,
okay. That's right. I'm deciding. By the way, I think I've decided to buy the Thailand Via. Just because I think they haven't updated this app in a while. We used to broadcast. And I think it's with the new updates of iOS, it's getting peculiar.
Okay.
And don't forget to ask them about the long-term life plans that guarantee your money back even if you outlive your policy. Take 5 minutes and call AccuQuote for your free quote. Call 1-800-489-0424. Find out how much you can save on your life insurance. Call AccuQuote today at 1-800-489-0424. That's 1-800-489-0424.
Rates, policy forms, and availability vary by state.
Seniors want peace of mind and a free prescription discount card? Keep listening. Are you age 85 or younger? Here's an important message to you and all seniors from Final Expense Direct Insurance Services. The average funeral now costs over $7,000, and the most government benefits will pay your family is only $255. Our senior plans start as low as $1 per day and will pay up to $30,000 for funeral and other final expenses. There's no medical exam, and you'll have lifetime coverage. Plus, your rates will never increase, and your plan cannot be canceled.
I'm not frozen. I'm staring and reading. It's back. It goes back.
Just answer a few simple questions and get approved right over the phone.
15 seconds.
And you'll receive a free prescription discount card. Call 800-506-8359. 800-506-8359. 800-506-8359. That's 800-506-8359.
Hey.
Now back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, 773-763-9278.
Okay, I think I've solved all of our Elvis audio problems, and we're just us flying. It's great at this point.
Wow.
Yeah. So anyways, here the Mika, and Joe Trump relationship is certainly a complicated one. It's, it has been for a while. And I was not a fan during the period where they were just kind of giving him this pajama party welcome every morning. It just seemed like, for God's sake, they had, they would just let him come on, kind of rant about stuff, complain about Hillary and the mess that, her emails allegedly had created. And then when they realize what he's actually doing in office, not the sales pitch he was giving to a very narrow cast set of voters, who, by the way, let's be abundantly clear, I feel for these people. I don't think a lot of them are the smartest people in the world in some cases. I think a lot of them are dealing with pressures and circumstances that are out of their control. I'm in Ohio right now. The opioid crisis in this state is brutalizing families. It is brutalizing cities and states, and it is largely the result of policies attempting to mitigate drug use and all kinds of stuff over the years. It's a combination of factors, including ones where the drug war itself. So it is not. It is overreaching decisions. Some of them meant in to be good. Some with good intentions, and then other ones made with the detest of certain people. Well, if we don't think treatment is working fast enough, we'll go back to mandatory minimums. And mandatory minimums aren't slowing it down, so we'll go back to treatment. And this vacillation between them, without ever letting a generation pass with one plan being worked all the way out. Just this kind of flip-flopping around of trying something to, a different color Band-Aid on an increasingly festering wound, has led to a myriad of deaths. One of the kids I went to high school with, or middle school with, and elementary school with in Kentucky, his son died of fentanyl heroin overdose a month ago. The deaths in Ohio right here are just stacking up day after day, and it is the sorrow and lack of direction of jobs and factories leaving these places. It is the absolute cascading effect of the economic decisions, and in my opinion, that come from both Reaganomics and NAFTA-based trade deals, and the appeal made, especially around the NAFTA save our jobs, keep our companies here, even though it was a lie. And I don't know how to be more clear on that. It was a lie. Trump was lying to these people. I don't fault them for believing it or wanting to believe it. Were there racists and anti-women people? Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. There's this is a little removed, but a friend of my wife has a sister who's struggled with opioids, and now she's doing kind of the Medicaid thing, but of course has a giant family and just had another baby. And my wife's friend said, "Well, it's a good thing that the timing on this, because all that coverage is going to go away."
Yeah.
With this new bill. And she, of course, is a Trump voter, not my wife's friend, but her sister is a Trump voter, and said, "I don't believe you." What do you do?
Well, yeah.
She just doesn't believe reality.
Right. Well, in those situations, I would say you can go online and read their bill. And here's the thing: just go online and read their bill. Don't believe me. Go read it. It's online. Download it. Look at it. Look at the cuts that are coming, and look at how they strategize the cuts to happen after the next election cycle, so that by the time you realize that they've cut it in half, they've already been reelected because they boost it for 2 years. I mean, it is the worst kind of political game playing, the kind of stuff that these people allegedly hate, the kind of stuff that these people are disgusted by. Politicians are, selling us down the road and giving tax cuts to billionaires and businesses while not doing this. I mean, like
both sides do it. Both sides do it.
Right.
Both sides do it.
And if Hillary got in, she'd have done it even worse.
Cares about you.
Right. It is so important that that languaging go away. It's impressive how they must cling to this. Now, I get everybody's been in an argument where you keep arguing so long, you've forgotten what you were arguing about, and you just want to be right still. Everybody's done that on an interpersonal level. And what you found is that a lot of the voters of the Republican Party, especially, there's a window of them, and I would say about 10% of the remaining 36% that like Trump. There's 10% of those people who bought the story hook, line, and sinker, are devastated by what's happened to their communities. I mean, I've toured this country. I go around to these little cities, these little towns that used to exist on one plant. I did stand-up in a little town in Indiana not too long ago. And the reason they booked me to come do stand-up is they were kind of trying to revive the town with just, let's have some entertainment. Let's have bands and comedians come through because this factory is empty. I performed in an empty blue jean factory, a factory that used to be full of sewing machines.
What did it smell like?
It smelled like dust. It smelled like a musty factory floor. It was all gone. It didn't have a cowboy kind of smell.
I don't know why I needed to know that. But
yeah,
thank you.
It smelled like a basement that nobody had been in a long time. And that was what is true. And they had a huge heroin problem in this town. There are 0 jobs. If you want to work, you gotta leave. Period. End of story. This is a town for retirees. It's the only people who can keep afloat. They are building. The state was building freeways as fast as they could make them, bypassing this place. It was like the story in the town in Cars getting bypassed. It was sad. It was sad watching this happen. And part of me was sitting there going like, okay, as an entrepreneur, and I live in Los Angeles. Obviously our show's in Chicago. These are my, and the times I have to be in New York for business and for stand-up, and then all my touring aside, and then my wanting to be a dad, actually have time in person with my son a lot, mixing all that together, part of me is still going, okay, what could I make that we could make here in this little town in Indiana to revive this factory? Because these people could work and want to work and are decent folks, but they're gutted, and each one of them had a family member who had died from fentanyl or Oxycontin or oxycodone. Every family had lost someone to it. And all of them were the ones who, I guarantee the ones there who voted for Trump had a definite problem with illegal immigrants. This was their thing. And if you talk to them, they won't say immigrants. They'll say illegal immigrants.
Illegals, yeah.
They don't say, I don't like Mexicans even. Like, this isn't that group. Those people exist for sure. That you can't spit in Alabama without hitting one in some ways, as much as you might not try, whatever. Anyways, if you're Jimmy Dore, I suppose. But the point being, these people, if you talk to them, past 10 minutes, you get past this idea that they have an abject racism to them, or an abject misogyny to them, or an abject hatred of other, or the label of xenophobia, and you just see wrecked families.
Mm-hmm.
And they bought what this guy was selling. And if they let go of it, all that's there is despair.
Yeah.
If they admit to the fact that they were suckered by this guy,
it's survival instinct.
It is. It's guttural. It's weak. It's fearful, but it's based on genuine devastation. And like I said, I don't have any patience for the white nationalists, the overt racists, the accidental misogynists, the people who cover using this language. But I will say that in running,
and that's like the worst Disney movie ever, by the way.
Which one? The
accidental misogynist.
Oh yeah, it's not funny. I just don't find it. I find it rude.
No, not at all. And you could tell it was no accident.
No, right. That was the punchline at the end of the movie. But there's a good portion of these people that used to be what I would call blue collar Democrats years ago, and felt left behind by the Democratic Party and the messaging, didn't vote or voted for Trump because they hate everything about him, but if he can manage, because he's a businessman, to bring back some of the factories, we'll figure out all the other stuff later. It's genuine. That's literally the thought.
Yeah.
And
I don't think you're far off at all.
Yeah. And at a certain point, there has to be, it's like that moment of Ted Nugent where you're like, dude, I don't like you, and I don't like how you've behaved or whatever. But if you're willing to zero out your behavior and start acting like a human being again, I'll still give you hell in conversation, but I'll never call for your death, and I'll never threaten you or ask for anybody else to threaten you. And I think that's the key. It
is, and it's hard to get there. It's hard to be. Most of this kind of hatred that people have for other people, and I know you're totally aware of this, is that you're uncomfortable with something about yourself, something you don't like about yourself.
Right.
And if you see it in anybody else, it It's that nerve that you don't even know is there. It's subconscious. And even if you're aware of it, it still happens.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think it's important always to have that constant. And I think that's it's the weight of being a progressive or a liberal, is that the ownership of our ideology, the ownership of the principles of being a progressive is more patient than the conservative movement. It has to be by nature. And you can't write human beings off in their wreckage. And between fentanyl and lead poisoning and bad diet and Fox News propaganda, you're ice skating up a hill, against a lot of these people's entrenched ideologies. But the important thing is like, I don't have to agree with these people to believe that they have the right to live and not die from toxic opioids.
Right. Did you see the takeaway of Fox News? I forgot what the lady's name is, Crystal something. She used to be on MSNBC until she got totally loony, where she was saying nobody knows when they're going to die. Everybody dies, like criticizing
that was
how many
Kennedy.
people die.
Kennedy used to be an MTV VJ.
Oh, that was Kennedy?
Yeah, that was Kennedy.
Oh my word! It's the worst. And she was like getting people to laugh with her about it.
Right. Yeah.
Like, I mean, we're all going to die. I mean, nobody knows when they're going to die.
Yeah,
you're hilarious.
Yeah, well, it's the whole thing is like death statistics aren't, the ironic was Obamacare was going to cause, remember, by the way, the one good thing about the argument about the AHCA and all these kind of things, don't hear much about death panels anymore. Yeah, have you noticed that? That entire conversation has vanished because it never came to pass, but also because the plan that they have in the elimination of who deserves, treatment on things is part of their argument with the restrictions on Medicaid. So believe me, and we'll talk about that when we come back, because I want to, Paul Ryan's got a real challenger next time around, and in many ways I
saw that guy.
It's great. And I think he's running as a Democrat. I think he's indicative of a certain type of Democrat that there needs to be a resurgence of in a lot of ways. That does have community ties and genuinely works a job so that union workers and people like that, because that guy's a member of a union. He's alive because he's a member of a union. He's got job stability because he's a member of a union. He can campaign because he gets a day off because he's a member of a union, because he works a really hard job.
Mm-hmm.
And the return of genuine union protections and effectively the Medicaid for all buy-in with supplemental private insurance, just like we have. We got to take a break. I'm way over this break. We'll get into an entire other discussion. We'll never go to break. So we'll be back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. Now with 100% more Johnny Million.
Whoop, whoop.
The Ben Joravsky Show.
Pritzker is not the Democratic nominee for governor. Yes, he's the one who gets most of the attention, but we have a primary season to get through, so that's why it's
smartest kid from every high school usually moved to a big city.
As well.
That's how I ended up in Chicago.
Voters, you don't just have to follow what your leaders tell you to do. You don't have to.
Is there
just
anyone from the resistance running for office yet?
The
the one direct, I think, if you could tie it to the resistance. Thank you so much, Natalie. And by the way, I didn't get to say because I was dealing with the tech, but thank you so much, Sean and Donna, so much. I hope you guys are going to have a great and safe 4th of July
for the 40 people
as well.
Diagnosed with sarcoma every day, and it's a life-changing word. Life-changing and devastating.
I get that, Driftglass. I do. I'm not. The ones that I'm fighting with, I'm not talking about that crowd. But I also can't continue to play the us and them violently.
And new therapies are desperately More research
and again, it's kind of like the Randy Rhoads thing. Like, look, dummy, I'm trying to benefit you as well.
Through awareness, advocacy,
and
research.
You know, I've always, as a comedian, I'm always up against this thing that I have morally areas where I won't go, joke-wise, because I think it's cruel or hurtful.
They had never heard before.
Could I make more money doing that? Could I actually punch through and get more because of controversy and other stuff like that?
The Sarcoma Foundation of America. Please go to Cure
Of course.
We have about 4 calls.
Okay.
And a minute, less than a minute.
5 words
Great.
and grown
Okay,
them
thanks.
into a national movement.
Um,
The Travis Manion Foundation is dedicated to assisting
but I just
our
won't do
nation's
it.
veterans,
Even though I
families of the
think I have
fallen,
every
and the
right
next
to, and the
generation
jokes are
of
funny,
young
and I wrote them, and all that
It's
kind of
about
stuff.
remembering the sacrifices
Um,
of all the men and women who've given their lives for this country, and honoring their legacies through service in your own community.
See, I think the
It's
the
about
representatives,
adopting the
yes,
motto,
but I
if
think
not
a lot of
me,
the
then
people
who?
around here
And
bought the
applying
idea
it
that
to
he was
your
going to fix the
daily lives
ACA, or
like
they
so
thought
many
that that was
others
what
have
was running.
already
They didn't
done.
understand
All
it.
these great things that we live in this beautiful country. It didn't
I don't think they're
happen
acting
because
like
no
that,
one
and I don't
chose
think
to
they
serve.
recognize the damage that
Serving
they're
should be,
doing.
like, in your blood. If not me, then who?
From our 9/11 Heroes Run to putting
All right.
character
Oh, what I was
to
saying about
action in your community,
the resistance
discover how you
people
can
is
honor
that it's the
fallen
female
by
candidates that are
challenging
actually.
the living. Get involved at
Hi, Jen Becky. Hey,
travismanion.org.
Julie. Welcome. I'm glad your Airbnb is excellent. Copenhagen is awesome. All right, coming back.
Now back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, 773-763-9278.
Welcome back.
Define the laws of
You gotta love Queen. Have you seen Queen and Adam Lambert? I know you're a huge fan.
I am really close to pulling the trigger on that.
Yeah, it's pretty
Because
great.
Adam Lambert is way more convincing to me than Paul Rogers, who has a great voice,
Oh,
but
yeah.
I didn't care that
It didn't
that
fit.
he was singing for Queen.
Yeah. It's like Skid Row's replacement singer. Like, he's a totally talented guy, wrong voice for the band.
Yeah, it's such a bummer.
Yeah, makes no sense. But the Queensryche solved it. Like, holy smokes.
Yeah, they totally did.
Yeah. I mean, the guy's great, and they're still being very creative. Anyways, that's our little sideline. I will say, and we're going to save something that the chat room brought up for the happy ending, because there was something really great that happened this week that kind of went by slightly under the radar. But we got some calls, so let's grab one of them before we run out of time, because I totally rode that last break to its.
Yeah, on line one we've got Steve, and it says from GC, so I'm hoping that's from Guitar Center.
Yeah, Steve from Guitar Center. Remember, we have a no stairway rule. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay, excuse me. I was just put down the sticks. You've really touched on a lot of points. I'll try and my comments. One, it's hard for me to sort of have a lot of sympathy for people like Moinko and Mika, and that Donald Trump is a creation of that kind of media.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't somebody who raised a lot of money. He got a lot of free coverage. And when somebody on the right, say, decided to cover, like Kasich, who was a policy wonk in that camp, pretty much you could rely upon the viewers to change the channel.
Right.
They wanted to go to someone who was covering Donald Trump, who was saying something absurd, and that's how Donald Trump got elected, because that's who people wanted to watch. So now these people are aghast that Donald Trump is attacking them because, what did you think, you were getting when you were promoting this guy and giving him free press? And having said that, the second point I wanted to make was that I can't agree with you more in terms of, the radical left in this country who wants to somehow equate the Red Scare of the 20s and the 30s and then again in the 50s to what we have today. I mean, today, the Russia under Vladimir Putin is much more akin to a fascist state than anything of the far left / communism. So, I mean, I really don't understand, how they get there, but intellectually somehow they convince themselves that this is America doing something to victimize people on the far left, or anyone who allies themselves as part of this international movement workers of the world unite, as if Vladimir Putin is akin to Lenin.
Right.
Which he is not.
No.
You know, he is, by some measure, perhaps the wealthiest man on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just not a wealth that can be declared because he can't explain it.
Right. He's effectively there's little difference between him and the head of the Medellin cartel or the like. And
how lonely would that be to be the richest man on the planet and be like, oh well, yeah, I mean, I'm pretty rich,
and everyone hates you.
Really... And it's also important to just say this one last thing. There's a motivation here. You know, I mean, as you pointed out previously, you know, the next new iPhone isn't coming out of Russia.
Right.
Russia has petrodollars, and as the world need for that sort of energy declines, what is Russia left with? I mean, we in America have a diverse economy. We're moving in a direction of green jobs and green energy. Not quickly enough, but that's a different issue. But again, we have alternatives. For someone like Vladimir Putin, there's a huge advantage to ensuring that you destabilize our process, our election process. Get someone like Donald Trump elected. What happens then? He withdraws from things like the Paris Accords. What does that mean? That means that in terms of leadership around the world, says to the world, oh, just keep pumping fossil fuels.
Steve, we got to hit the news.
Yeah.
We got to hit the news, man.
Appreciate the call, Steve. We got to go to break. We'll be back right after this. Thanks. All great points. We'll take more calls after this. It's the Houseparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide.
This is Ben Jarofsky. Join me every weekday from 2 to 5 as we hold your elected officials accountable on WCPT
stand to hold this. So I'm not.
Facts matter.
I'm gonna get a cramp.
Now and vote on a replacement later. That compares to his campaign pledge of coverage
No,
for Americans.
Putin's not a czar because the illusion of democracy didn't exist under the czars, and so there also wasn't the hypocrisy of it, or
it's budget crisis time in 2 states.
New Jersey Governor Chris Christie has suspended all non-essential services. This includes state parks as the legislature meets in a special session today.
Jeez.
At issue, including legislation to give the state access to the reserve fund of New Jersey's largest health insurer if it...
Chris Christie is showing everybody as governor how he would have been president, and this is a guy who thinks that how Trump is doing it is perfectly well, which is basically borrow and spend. Everything they blame on Democrats or assume Democrats are do every single time. Wait, why do I have
that feed better?
Huh? Yeah.
Better.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just holding up my. For everybody in the chat room, this is how I broadcast to Chicago through my iPod Touch. So I'm holding it up because I'm using the mic on it because we were getting a feedback issue with something in the app, and this is the only way it's working right now. So ta-da. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Julie has the record for listening to the show from the most people. She's effectively the most mega worldwide listener, for us. After hours said nothing, just to hear people just move along. Right. Yeah, and Driftglass, let me be abundantly clear. My patience with these kind of Midwestern families who are in freak out mode and stuff does not extend to the people that they put in office. Certainly not Trump. If you watch my feed, I let him have it constantly. The only thing I do is never call for any violence. And specifically, don't denigrate him using phrases that are used to denigrate other people as best I can. So there's no ancillary damage that I specify and try to be as laser focused on him as possible or on Paul Ryan as possible. And the only area where I use a blanket statement because I think it's apropos is when I call the House Freedom Caucus the Freedom Caucasians, because that's a group of people they have chosen to have, and they are all the same. They don't let other people in that group. They're not going, yeah, don't punch Nazis, don't punch anybody. It's hard to do, but it's better. And at some point, you have to live on the principle, no matter how painful it is, because you have to, it's funny because it's almost like the criticism that a lot of people on the left legitimately have with the fundamentalist Christian movement is we tell them to forgive. We tell them to live up to the standards of Jesus, and they don't. They say God bless our bombs and all this kind of crazy stuff. They think God is on our side in war, all those kind of elements, and we criticize them rightly, I think, for that. So at a certain point, no, they go out after the holiday, Jude. Thanks for reminding, though, but they are going out. Yeah, don't hug him. You'll get something on you. But the point is that if we as progressives go, everyone has value, everyone deserves respect, everyone's voice matters, this is what a democracy is about. If we're handling that thing, then it's a little more difficult work than being a conservative, because it's an exclusive club. We're not an exclusive club. And if somebody isn't good at expressing their worries, their ideas, and all that kind of stuff, I give them a lot more latitude. I just think it's important. And people can and will disagree with me on that. But again, it only applied in those situations where people are coming around. Where they have these moments where they might have been cruel or stupid, and they woke up to it. I mean, look at Arianna Huffington, arguably. Like she was the wife of a right-wing politician. He came out as gay, was caught in all this stuff. She, she changed her opinion, and she started Huffington Post, and I have my issues with them. But she started that as a response to kind of coming around. If we just said, no, once you were with that guy and you believed those things at that time, and there's no coming back for you, then that's reasonable. And so I think there is a responsibility to that, So.
15 seconds.
Cool. New Jersey just suspended all their non-essential services because they're having a budget crisis because Chris Christie needs a limo to go 100 yards.
You're listening to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
I've had people walk out of me before, but not when I was being so charming.
Video streaming at halsparks.com.
I don't care for you or for the putrid sludge you're troweling out.
Damn puss-faced little pimp stick.
True progressive talk.
Might be a good time for you guys to give up.
So in between freaking out that Greta Van Susteren was let go from MSNBC and tweeting more stuff about Mika and Joe, Trump's, I think, standout tweet.
Trump freaked out about Greta Van Susteren.
Oh, yeah. Word is that Greta Van Susteren was let go by her out of control bosses at NBC and Comcast because she refused to go along with, quote, Trump hate. That was 4 hours ago.
Word.
An hour later, he dumped 3 in a row because he was watching television. You can always tell.
Uh-huh.
But the first one he started with was an interesting one. This was actual news. He said, numerous states are refusing to give information to the very distinguished voter fraud panel, in all caps. What are they trying to hide? Okay, first of all, ask Chris Kobach from Kansas, because he's the guy you put in charge of it, and he won't release his state's data.
And he's crazy pants.
That's right. And the reason why they don't want to give this information to the federal government, why a lot of these states don't want to do it, some of the blue states, their objection is, what are you going to do with that data, considering the RNC dumped 198 million voter information onto the web for 4 days, unprotected? What are you going to do with this information once we give it to you for the next election cycle? Are you just going to use it as a voter purge in states so that you can guarantee you stay in office? And in that case, the right-wing ones don't want to do it because they know that if anybody ever crunches the numbers, their voter purges of legit voters who are minorities or from different districts they think will vote Democratic or vote independent, whatever, those will all ultimately, they'll get caught, that information being in the government issues. If it ever goes, if the next election goes, Democratic, or there's the next time there's a Democratic president, if they look at voter rules or they try to go to the Supreme Court and go, we need to reinstitute the Civil Rights Act because of voter manipulation, here's data that Trump gathered in his attempt to find voter fraud and stuff, actually points out the fact that they were purging legit voters. Yeah. So that's why the red states, that's why Kansas doesn't want to do it. And again, Chris Kobach is the Secretary of State in Kansas, and he's running that system now, and he's responsible for actually delivering Kansas's information to the panel he is running, and he has refused. So my response, of course, to Trump was, ask Kobach. That being said, so
I do like that you talk to Trump directly.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, my goal is to get banned, quite frankly, but I think it's going to take a while. I want to get blocked. It's the gold standard. I'm very excited about that idea. And again, I don't use any of his non-changeable elements as a pejorative. I don't question his sexual orientation, his race, or his gender, but I will call him a dummy because that's completely that's a choice he's made. To be dumb.
You do it kind of like Fred Sanford.
Yeah, that's right. You big dummy. But or kind of a Rickles angle on it. Yeah. So there's a bunch of stories that have come out lately that are a bit, that have furthered the Russian story. It was funny because I was having a conversation with a relative. We all have the relatives, and I'm traveling for the holidays or whatever, and we all have a relative that we get to talk about, talk to over Thanksgiving or whatever. That's our difficult Fox News viewing relative, right? And I look at these as opportunities, not to get into a shouting match with a family member, but to calmly sharpen my argument. It helps me refine how I present this idea. Because I know I'm talking to a wall, but hey, Buddha sat before a wall for 9 years, and when he arose, he was enlightened. Mm-hmm. So I use it as a learning opportunity. Okay, so there's a Republican operative, this guy's Peter Smith, who apparently is blabbing nonstop at this point. But this is I think the story initially came from Reuters, but a Republican operative who claimed ties to top Trump campaign officials. By the way, he claimed those ties to Russian hackers, not just to the news that he's talking to, who later became White House officials, didn't seem to care that Russia might have stolen the Hillary Clinton emails he was seeking, according to one tech expert he approached. Peter Smith described to the Wall Street Journal how he tried to obtain those emails in a report published Thursday, and the newspaper published a follow-up late Friday on a document showing the GOP operative boasted of links to Trump campaign officials Steve Bannon, Kellyanne Conway, Sam Clovis, and specifically, in this particular part, Mike Flynn. The 81-year-old Smith died in mid-May, about 10 days after speaking to the Journal's reporter at his own request. Basically, it was a deathbed confession. Matt Tate, CEO and founder of the UK-based Capital Alpha Security, served as an unnamed source for the initial story and was extensively quoted by name in the follow-up, gave a detailed account of the Lawfare blog about how Smith recruited him in efforts to uncover the 33,000 emails missing from Clinton's private server. Tate began studying Clinton's publicly released State Department emails last spring and posted findings related to computer security on his Twitter account because he thought they might offer insight into cybersecurity and national security issues if she was elected president. He turned his attention to emails stolen from DNC servers in June after the Guccifer 2.0 persona dumped them online. A few weeks later, right around the time the DNC emails were dumped by WikiLeaks, and curiously around the same time Trump called for Russia to get Hillary Clinton's missing emails, I was contacted out of the blue by a man named Peter Smith, who had seen my work going through these emails, Tate wrote. Smith implied that he was well connected as a Republican political operative. Smith claimed someone from the dark web had contacted him and offered emails purportedly stolen from Clinton's private server, and he wanted Tate to authenticate the documents. Tate, who is not a U.S. citizen, said he didn't feel comfortable offering assistance to either campaign, but he continued speaking to Smith because he wanted to learn more about the identity of the dark web source, who he suspected might have ties to Russian intelligence. He never found the source's identity, but Tate was troubled that Smith brushed off his concerns that the emails might have been stolen by Russian operatives as part of an influence campaign against the United States. Smith, however, didn't seem to care, Tate said. From his perspective, it didn't matter who had taken the emails or their motives for doing so. He never expressed to me any discomfort with the possibilities the emails he was seeking were potentially from a Russian front, a likelihood he was happy to acknowledge. If they were genuine, they would hurt Clinton's chances and therefore help Trump. Again, by the way, this particular, the fact that he didn't care the source or the why of this particular source, understand that, I explained this a couple of weeks ago, how easy it is. If I got a hold of all of your emails, all I'd have to do is insert a criminal sentence in every 10th email that you'd ever written, and to deny the parts of them. You'd have to go through and redline everything in every email you had ever written and go, I didn't say that, but I did say this. And so you guarantee that any political campaign who said anything that they think is, just problematic in how they're fighting their battles, if they think that, it sounds bad, that even though it's a good thing to be said, or that they're working on strategy, or they're denying strategy, they're going, somebody brought up, why don't you say this? And they wrote back, no, I'm not going to say that. But they have to redline stuff. People will start to make a decision. Oh, you know what? I believe what they said that they didn't say that, but I don't believe they didn't say this. That kind of stuff. And it's a Gordian knot you get stuck in. So it's a perfect trap to dump the falsified emails online. That's why, digital documents is all, is a problem. That was the difference between the papers, the Pentagon papers versus, digital documents. It always will be. It's a point of concern that's always going to have to be that until you can track revisions in the internal working, and that part can't be hacked. The trusting of it, it's incredible. So anyways, this guy was shopping around the emails that allegedly had been gotten from Hillary's server. He wanted this guy to authenticate them, and he was basically touting that he had ties to Michael Flynn. Smith routinely talked about, quote, the bizarre world at the top of the Trump campaign, and seemed to know about personality conflicts between Flynn and James Clapper, then Director of National Intelligence. He said Flynn was angling to become CIA Director under Trump, but had been persuaded that he might face difficulty passing the Senate confirmation process, which he did not undergo to become National Security Advisor. And of course, he's the shortest-serving National Security Advisor in the history of the country. Tate said he warned Smith over several phone conversations about the risks involved in releasing emails that might have been stolen by Russian intelligence, which Tate never actually saw, but he said the GOP operative was unconcerned. It's no overstatement to say that my conversations with Smith shocked me. And by the way, Tate was not a fan of Hillary, was concerned about her lack of security around her stuff, and this was what he was writing about. Given the amount of media attention given at the time to the likely involvement of the Russian government in the DNC hack, it seemed mind-boggling for the Trump campaign, or for its offshoot of it, to be actively seeking those emails. To me, this felt really wrong. Tate stopped speaking with Smith in mid-September after he was asked and refused to sign a non-disclosure agreement. This is all the fallout. This is the part, by the way, this is when, conservatives who've been, bouncing around this idea that the collusion story is phony. This is the dime they all turned on this week. The Peter Smith story and his relationship to Mike Flynn. And largely because in the Trump circles, they know this guy. They know he was around. And so the story lines up. And so if you'll notice, just like the the death panels storyline, I always get my FEMA camps mixed up with my death panels, and it's two great tastes that taste great together in the Republican political chocolate peanut butter mix, but they in the death panel, just like the death panel story faded when they realized that actually the Medicaid cuts and the Medicare cuts are the closest thing to that, in regards to that, like that dropped off. Immediately the collusion story is fake went away. And now we're to, well, talking to that isn't bad. I mean, it's not technically illegal. Collusion isn't illegal. It's just unethical. And even that, maybe it is ethical. Maybe it's just alternative ethical. So, that's fascinating. We're going to get some calls right after this break. We'll be back. Right. Watch out. Watch out now. We'll be back. Yeah, you're right, Bison Lawyer. I get my Holocaust centers, my FEMA camps, and my death panels mixed up. You know what? I think it all got messed up when Obama came for my guns. Everything just got knocked off my desk, and it all got a jumble. Yeah. So that part of I have a head cold. I'm living amongst faggots. Thank you, Carl. Your short temper has benefited us. Thanks, Billy. Yeah, it's an easy mistake anybody can make between death panels, FEMA camps. It's all one big collusion salad. Yeah. Hmm. What? Hilarious. You think Trump's an asset? Oh, asshat. I misread that. Can't wait for the Trump season medallion. Yeah. Oh, a Russian asset. Yeah. I think he's a Russian asshat too. I think that's completely reasonable. Collusion salad, yeah, with Russian dressing. Oh, that's good. It's good stuff. Just like my babushka used to make.
Now back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, 773-763-9278.
Welcome back. After our audio issues over the course of the first hour, I think it's only fair that we try to take a call again and ratchet up our chances. What do we have?
I think so.
Yeah.
We've got David from Sacramento. Always a pleasure.
Right on. Hey, David.
Hey, I want to talk to talking out of your own ass Trump and his stupid voters that follow him.
Okay, sure.
All right, so the thing about it, what I'm trying to say, I don't understand.
Oh, we know what you're trying to say.
I just
think
want an answer from somebody on your show next week, or somebody currently. Can you explain to me, because I'm not stupid. Mm-hmm. I may not have a Yale or a Harvard or a Princeton degree, which some of the people that go there, they're still stupid when they get out of college there.
Mm-hmm.
But I do have common sense skills better than they do. And what this question is this. How in the hell do these people say that there's going to be more choices in the market when these damn people don't even have a frickin' job to afford choices?
Mm-hmm.
Somebody explain that to me. Get down to the root of the issue.
Yeah.
Well, they're going to be
market solutions for people who can't afford to go to the market. Right.
So explain to me that they don't have a job.
Yep.
That's what I want to know.
I completely agree. I mean, I think that's the overriding issue in this kind of thing, and that's when people end up voting like blindly for. I don't care. And this is look at Trump is like a leaky chemical plant. Okay? It was a dumb idea to build it in the first place. You knew it would toxify the water, but everybody thought, I need a job so bad. I don't care that they're building this thing upstream from my house. I'm out of work. And, you know, look at the cancer clusters all through the South that are around these chemical plants and petrochemical, like, refineries. And then understand that the very people who work there were desperate for work. Desperate for work. And they kind of overlooked the fact that, oh yeah, my children will be born with birth defects. But if I can't feed them, what difference does it make? And maybe the Lord just wanted to test me by giving me a child, with needs like this, or the Lord wanted to test me with cancer. I mean, they think like the poisoning happens magically, but the jobs happen through market manipulation and all that point. He literally is a coal plant you're downriver from. I need to work there. I don't care if the coal sleuth gets into my water and poisons my kids ultimately, because maybe I can fight off the poison, but I can't fight off lack of food or shelter. And so they make these decisions along those lines, and I think that's exactly it. And then the Paul Ryans of the world, the Ayn Randian crowd, believes that if these people were worth a damn, they'd be able to get a job, and the market will work it out. The market will solve it. This is my favorite, like, Rand Paul, Paul Ryan, Ron Paul, that whole Ron Paul Ryan Rand Paul Ryan crowd all run together into one big robot who believes that that it's not that the market or business is a meritocracy, or education is a meritocracy, or sports is a meritocracy, but life itself, biological existence, is a meritocracy. That's what Paul Ryan believes. That's the flaw ultimately in his belief system that he's too blind to see. But in that crowd, there's always this whole thing about, what do we need food inspectors for, according to Ron Paul? Because if a restaurant serves rotten meat, eventually they'll close down and no one will ever go there again. Well, a lot of good that did the dead people. I go to a restaurant.
Who knows when you're going to die?
Right, that's right. Thanks, Kennedy. Literally, this is the weird part. Ron Paul is willing to sacrifice dead people dying simply by eating tainted food or drinking poison water or lead in their water, simply to have the market be as free as possible with no checks on it whatsoever. And they're like, the omelet they're making is an unfettered free market with no checks on it whatsoever. And
I do like feta.
Yeah, it's lovely.
An omelet.
Yeah. A feta market would be lovely. You go there and all that submerged cheese. But
I would like this unfettered.
Yeah, that's right. Completely unfettered. Sir, it's a Greek salad. They don't come that way. But what? All right. Anyways. But point being, Ron Paul always has this running thing about, why do we need inspectors? Why do we need government intervention in business or whatever? And like, you know what? We didn't used to have it. We didn't. We didn't used to have all these inspectors. And you can make a point that some of them may have gotten out of hand and that we might overdo it sometimes. But our problem was never underdoing it. Back in the Old West and in the early parts of the Industrial Revolution in the United States, people died of poisoning all the time. And it wasn't because they were making bad food choices. It wasn't because they were lazy. It wasn't because they weren't thinking stuff through. They were eating what everybody else was eating that was normally safe, and some dude allowed E. coli and all this bacteria to get all over a batch of stuff, and a person got mystery poisoned and they died from it. And at some point, we decided as a civil society, as a first world nation, that people shouldn't have to have a testing kit on them at all times for their food, because it kind of slows down progress. Can you imagine if every lunch meeting every business person had to have entailed them running a series of tests on the chicken they were eating or the broccoli and spinach to make sure it didn't have any myriad of bacterial or fungal infections on it? It would kind of make the I'm just saying it would dip the Dow a little bit, arguably. And at some point they decided that, you know what? We don't need... Yeah, Driftglass in our chat room just brought up The Jungle with Upton Sinclair. Like, at a certain point, we decided, you know what? It would be better if we had an organization within the government that took care of this part overall. We won't be able to stop everything, but we'll damn sure slow the amount of death that we experience from these kinds of sources. And you know what? We did. Since the invention of what the Republicans call, quote-unquote, big government, I don't know if you've noticed this, but population has grown. The volume of human beings since Western civilization specifically started instituting what the Republicans view as big government, food safety regulations, air and water regulations, highway traffic laws, helmet laws, all those kind of things that they think is this overreaching big government. Right now, life is kicking death's ass. And the pro-life party, the Republicans who view themselves as being pro-life, can't, it's the old Carlin thing. If you're pre-born, you're fine. If you're preschool, you're screwed, to coin a phrase. But almost every situation where they seem to be running interference is based on this idea that life is sacrosanct till you're born. And then after that, you gotta go.
Yep.
That your duty is to die quickly if you're not being productive. Which, by the way, sounds really early communist. You know what I mean? If you're not a productive member of the proletariat, you're wasting resources for the fatherland or the motherland, and you got to go off to a camp, off to a, understand that we created the National Institute for Health and the CDC and all these kind of things because we didn't think that people got polio because they deserved it, because they didn't earn their life in meritocracy by being a child at the wrong window of time. We got to take a break. When we come back, more of your calls. 773-763-9278. That's right, Chris. Yeah, Carl, I would even say that, this is the problem, is that we don't have a problem in this country with health care. We have a health insurance and a health cost problem because the technology is increasingly cheaper. If you take out the profit margin in it and go, okay, this is, if people weren't trying to buy a boat off this, if the AMA allowed as many surgeons and doctors to be in the market as they could, as wanted to be, without artificially keeping the number of doctors in the country low so that the pay stays high, like burning corn crops when people are starving. And I agree, Carl, and that was the point of it. I mean, there's all sorts of talons in the ACA that is why the Republicans are freaking out, why it's got to go this year, because the triggers that happen over the course of it, once they're there, and it was absolutely the start of eventually Medicaid for all, that buy-in. Mm-hmm. Deep distribution breakfast. I don't eat breakfast. Not eating breakfast is the breakfast of champions. Yeah, Carrie, you're right. I guarantee your urology surgeon system. By the way, my mom worked for a urologist for 12 years. These people want to make a living as a highly skilled worker, as they should. They should be able to some degree, charge what they need to actually do it. But the technology and the drugs, especially, that are, as it grows, the only reason, the middleman insurance aspect of it that allows it to jack up. It's just like the mortgage companies, allowed houses and how they manipulate them to the housing market to go through the roof because people can fend off the payment for as long as possible. Well, if you can fend it off, you can make it, you will stretch it from 10 years to 15 years to 30 years. You keep the payment, the same, but now you're paying out over the course of your life. You used to be able to buy a house in about 5 years. Same house, same experience. It's not like the experience of that house has changed all that much, or the quality of the building has changed so much that it's more expensive. As a matter of fact, it's less costly by material to build a house than it ever has been in many ways. So this idea that houses need to be more expensive for any other reason than where you're living for work is an absurdity. And doctors need to get paid, and doctors need to get paid beyond
15 seconds.
A wage that goes along with the stress and the education and the cost and the dedication that goes along with it. Insurance companies and pharmaceutical companies try to get you between you and your doctor.
Now back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, 773-763-9278.
Welcome back. Let's take another call.
Yeah, let's go with Mike from the north side on line 3.
Excellent. Hey, Mike, welcome.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Good.
Doing all right?
I'm a black man who's living in Chicago, but I would like to say in regards to all the inner cities that's in this country have been affected by drug use.
Mm-hmm.
We know from past that the government, the United States government, was involved in
the CIA funneling money through the Iran-Contra to bring cocaine into this company that's spreading the cocaine out by turning it into crack, releasing it on the streets of Los Angeles. Well documented, absolutely.
And eventually it made it to Chicago, Detroit, Memphis, New York City. So this was affecting the black community.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been affecting us for many, many years, right? So now it was no issue as long as black folks was being harmed by this. There's no problem. But now it has gotten to the point where it's not affecting black folks as it did in the past. Now it's affecting the white community, the majority community, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now it's become an illness. It has become a sickness.
Right.
But before, it didn't matter.
It was a moral failing.
Black lives didn't matter. So my question is, and I'm going to say this without disrespecting you,
sure,
your co-host, and all the listeners.
Mm-hmm.
Joan Walsh, who is a contributor to MSNBC, wrote a book.
Mm-hmm.
She wrote a book titled, "What's the Matter with White People?"
Right.
The question is, what is the matter? Being the majority group in this country, how can people continue to allow the power structure to have them voting on issues against their own interests?
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand that. What is about to happen in regards to Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security is something that Republicans have been trying to get rid of for years.
Right.
Most of all the Trump voters are going to be affected by that.
Yep.
And they act as though it's not going to affect them. They're not going to believe that Trump is doing to them until it really starts to affect them and they see it and they feel it, that it's hurting them.
Mm-hmm.
So my question is, what is the matter with white people?
Sure.
Can you answer that question?
I'll tell you from my perspective that white people are not a monolithic block any more than any other racial group. There's a distinct divide between what the perceived white culture in this country. I think the North-South division emotionally between the whites in this country is not like psychologically explored enough. It's just seen as that Southern whites and rednecks have this attitude about the other, and that Northern whites are always trying to fight them back. That the blue districts are more, the white people who live in New York and California and Seattle and Chicago and to some degree are the elites, and they try to force a more pluralistic society down the throats of rural America. It's a thinner populace with more political power. I'll tell you one of the biggest problems that the white power structure has in this country that's very distinct is the imbalance of power based on land mass that highly populated areas fight against when it comes to rural states having more senators. Like, for example, Kentucky has a population equal to the size of one California city. And not the outlying area, just Los Angeles, 5 million people, okay? But they have 2 senators. All of California, which contains a lot of white people, and a lot of white people who, through the San Jose Mercury News stories, through the Los Angeles Times following those stories, through the pushback after the riots and the pushback after the Simi Valley trial of the white officers on the Rodney King beating specifically, have been very progressive for a very long time. California is one of those states. New York has been one of those states. Washington State's been one of those states. But they are literally outnumbered in their governmental representation by rural states with fewer people. That the white people that live among black people and Hispanic people and Asian people and gay and straight living and working next to each other who have a pluralistic view of this society have been effectively since, I would say, 1981 relegated through the redistricting to some degree and the reinforcement of the power structures of rural states into a smaller and smaller impact in their voting. So that if you're an LA liberal, or a San Francisco liberal, or a Sacramento liberal, like Governor Brown and the like, and you believe in the idea of sanctuary cities, you believe that what the CIA did as far as dumping crack cocaine is wrong, you believe that there should be legal pushback against that, and there were many white people who were on the committees, who were on the Iran-Contra committees, who pushed back against the same white people who were involved in it. They were fighting them over it. There was a division amongst those people there. But what you have in this country is a representation problem. That the liberal whites in this country who are okay with people being different, are okay with other cultures, are supportive of minority rights, they have less of a representation in specifically the Senate than the abject racist whites that we all decry on a regular basis. When Kentucky has 2 senators representing its people, and I'm originally from Kentucky. Before I moved to Chicago and went to high school. When Kentucky, it has 2 senators, and all the people in Los Angeles, San Diego, San Francisco, and Sacramento, Fresno, Bakersfield, all the cities in California have 2 senators. And that supposedly is a balance in the Senate, which is oftentimes the bellwether on what legislation actually gets through. Because those people have length of bone in their in their election cycle. They get to stay on for 6 years. And Congress people go, they're in a 2-year cycle. They have less of an impact. There's a lot of infighting there. The stuff that finally gets up, the House creates 186 bills. The Senate lets about 25 through in the same amount of a cycle. Yeah, and we're talking about in the chat room, too, at houseparks.tv. If you ever want to join us in there, Greg just brought up, like, Wyoming, Idaho, Kansas, Alabama, Louisiana. These are states, by the way, where their big population centers are very blue. They're Democratic. They vote for minority rights. They vote for gay rights. They vote for equality for women. But they are outnumbered in the districting layout congressionally in their state by Republicans. And they're also outnumbered, and then you've got secretaries of states denying urban areas and white-leaning, Democratic-leaning white areas voting machines. That's been a strategy for a very long time, 30, 40 years. We're talking an entrenched structure. It's really difficult to balance the volume of the majority in this country, the majority of white people in this country, who are pluralistic in their view of the world, who are open-minded, who are respectful of other cultures, being blocked effectively in the Senate in a lot of places because each state gets 2 senators regardless of population. And those senators, because they stay in for 6 years, have more sway in the state governments. And then and this is beyond the talk about governorships and all that kind of stuff. That entrenchment is a very specific reason why, regardless of how liberals in this country vote, by volume, 3 million more people voted for Hillary Clinton than voted for Donald Trump. Regardless of the fact that they have this, that you have 2 senators, California has 2 senators. Wisconsin has 2 senators. Wyoming has 2 senators. And they are the bottleneck. And they last longer than the president. Senators have a longer term than a president does. And that window has allowed the Mitch McConnells of the world, who, by the way, Mitch McConnell is he's 50% of the senators that represent less than 5 million people. And he's determining in the House right now, in the Senate right now, the AHCA vote. That to me is the big issue in our layout of governmentally. It's why a parliamentary restructuring of our government would be the revolution that everybody should shoot for, but we waste our time with everybody wanting to run a president and not building the infrastructure of other parties and eventually getting into those secretaries of states. So you want to change this country for the better, you start electing Democratic secretaries of states and independent secretaries of states. And you do not let Republicans who don't want people to vote, who've said it many, many times all the way back to Paul Weyrich and the Heritage Foundation, they don't want people to vote. And who's in charge of the vote? Secretaries of state. So you got to stop the Republican governors because they put in Republican secretaries of state, and those people are the front line of the undermining of one person, one vote in this country. That's what's wrong with white people right now, is that the southern racist, xenophobic crowd that everybody decries in dealing with this stuff outnumbers the people who actually outnumber them in population in terms of representation in this country. That's what's up.
Hang in there, Carl.
Yeah. Oh, is Carl waiting on the line? Do we have Carl?
He is.
Oh, that's nice.
Yep.
That's part of a happy ending. We'll be back right after this. The House Parks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. We'll be back with Carl. It's always been a big sticking point with me that it doesn't modify, and that's why some people are trying to separate. When you're talking about separating California into 2 states, there's some on the left are worried that if you split it up, then the kind of right-leaning people will control Northern California to some degree or whatever, or you'll split it. If you split it side to side, if you literally geographically split it in the middle, like in two halves, not north-south, but east-west, you would have a right state and a left state in some ways. And again, you'd be giving 2 senators to a very low population state that leans Republican. But if you bifurcated it north-south, where San Francisco and Sacramento were the top part, and Los Angeles and San Diego were the bottom part, and that's kind of the big, you'd have 2 liberal states created by volume of human beings. And that's why they won't let it happen. And so we have this history of north-south bifurcation. And so that's the automatic inclination. Illinois, it's interesting, WWS, because Illinois isn't red if you get rid of Chicago. It's just that the people by volume drops off drastically. Yes, Illinois would go red if you drop Chicago, but without Chicago, there is no financial base for the entire rest of the state. Yeah, right, drift class. That's exactly what it'd be. Left and super left. The South, LA and San Diego would be lefty. Sacramento and San Francisco and the North, Napa and all that stuff would be uber left. Absolutely. So they don't want to bifurcate. That's why they're fighting it. Absolutely. Yeah. DC statehood would end up with another 2 liberal senators as well, as would Puerto Rico. Yes. And if we made Basel a state, it would totally. Yeah. Yeah, the Dakotas won't do that because of oil rights and other stuff. They until we get off fossil fuel, they won't merge, because that's what the land bifurcation in those 2 states is about. Because they want to be able to, kind of set up their own little mini oligarchies, protecting the oil reserves in North Dakota. And ultimately, the Dakotas themselves, this is my prayer, that one day, when we've gotten tired of fossil fuels, the land goes back to the natives permanently.
Welcome back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide. It's now time for the happy ending.
Welcome back. Part of the happy ending is the fact that I think we have Carl from Nashville on the line calling us.
We do have Carl from Nashville on the line. Line 5.
Right on. Hey, Carl, welcome.
Hey, Hal, thanks, man.
Absolutely. Always a pleasure.
You to come to Nashville, man.
I know. I keep trying to work it out. And as a matter of fact, the newest plan is actually I'm coming down there to record, but some music. But as far as stand-up, we'll get into Zanies eventually, I promise, yeah.
Well, I tell you, I was listening to the gentleman before me, and he asked the question, what's wrong with white people? And you explained it exquisitely.
Thank you.
Now, let me break it down.
Please.
And get simple with it.
Right.
Not white people as a whole, but the white people that solid 38% that Donald Trump has been at for about the past 2 years, they won't leave him at all. He could say he liked to grab women by the vagina.
Mm-hmm.
He could talk about Megyn and Kelly's period. He could talk about Mika, her face. He could say some of the most nastiest, outrageous things.
Yeah.
The common denominator that he has with those people is racism and xenophobia.
Mm-hmm.
As long as he's racist and xenophobia, the 38 solid minority that he has with him, and we hate to think that it's the middle of 2017, almost 2018, before you know it, that our country is still that racist. Yes, our country is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the bottom line. That's the reason why these people continue to vote against their own self-interest, because the politicians keep telling them that if you're not better than the other, then who you better than? And you're from Kentucky, and you know what I mean.
Absolutely.
And it's really just as simple as that.
Mm-hmm.
I know it may sound too simplistic, but that's it. As long as he stay racist,
they'll stick with him, right?
His solid, solid people will be, and with the Republican Party. As long as the Republican Party continues to be the party against the other, the xenophobic racist party, then they'll always have that solid base behind them. Mm-hmm. These people vote against their self-interest. I watch it on a daily basis. I'm here in the South. I watch it on a daily basis in Tennessee. And you're absolutely right. Tennessee has 3, maybe 4 pockets of liberalism: Memphis, Nashville, Knoxville, and Chattanooga. The rest of the counties and cities in this state is rural, straight red Republican, and that's how they keep control of the state. We do get mayors that's Republican and Democrats. Most of the Democrats mayors in Nashville, and in the big cities, Chattanooga, Memphis, and Knoxville as well. And we do occasionally get governors that's Democratic or independent leaning.
Yeah, usually to clean up a fiscal mess left behind by a Republican.
Man. As long as Donald Trump still keep up his xenophobic racist stance, then he'll always have that solid 38% behind him, period.
Right. I think that's, if you look at Brexit or you look at the Middle East, you look at if you travel in China at all, most of the time you're talking about every society has about a 20% crazy factor. Every society has 20% of the people who have their own reasoning in life that is unreachable, and they will attach to whether it's they become part of the communist revolution, even if that means murdering their parents during during the uprising in China. Whether it means they become sycophantic towards Putin where they live, whether it means they become hyper-Catholic, hyper-Christian, Orthodox and violently settlers in Israel against Palestinians who believe that they're animals and should be killed. It's members of the Hamas version of Palestinians who believe that this is a war that needs to happen. There's a 20% nutcase element of any society, and by volume, the Earth is full of people now. There's 9 billion of us on the planet. So what we need to do, though, is always remind ourselves that percentage hasn't really changed all that much, but there's a volume of human beings, and just because they're loud doesn't mean they're right when they're doing it. And we have to, it's that requirement of maintain your intellect, composure, your humor, your ability to fight back, and your argument so well that they end up walking away going, "Damn, he's got a point," or "I don't want to talk to that person anymore." That should be the win. And I know you know this because of living in the South. You'll meet people who, on measure, are anti-gay, straight up just hate gay people, think it's gross, think it's a sin, whatever their label is for it, they can't stand it. But if there was a burning car with a rainbow sticker on it, and it was obvious that the driver was gay or whatever, they would still rush over and try to help get people out of a burning car. They would still do it. It's a weird aspect of Southern life. And
it is. I mean, it really is. And you're absolutely correct about that. That's why, to me, I chalk it up to this right here.
Yeah.
There's a big percentage of people that like to be followers, and if someone is leading them, and they're leading them, and the way they're leading, the way they're thinking, if they're racist and they think that this guy is a racist too, and he's going to do racist things,
right?
They will. Let's use the Arab thing. They know Baghdadi is at the scene with pictures wearing Rolexes, but they don't care. They will still blow themselves up. They know that the Republican Party
has been
taking things from them for years. They know the Republican Party has wanted to take away Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and all the benefits that these poor southern states are getting. They don't care as long as the leadership has been shown to be against the other. And there was no one like Donald Trump in a good 30 or 40 years that's just blatant coming out against the other. We haven't seen that in at least 40, 45 years.
But I will say, I agree, Carl.
Even Ronald Reagan did it, with the dog whistle. He was straight out with the bullhorn, and these people like, yes, this is what I've been waiting for a long time.
But Reagan's version of it was the loudest thing that had ever been heard at that point. You know, and it's an increasingly, you know, interconnected society where we're tweeting back and forth and we're snarkier than ever, and we, you know, there's no such thing as a hero anymore. And you know, every superhero and spy movie, the bad guy always ends up being your best friend. Like there's a trend in how people interact that this is indicative of it, and it's like when, you know, people decry. We think it's cute that they decried Elvis's dancing back in the day as being, you know, the end of civilization because it was, you know, it was overt sexuality just cut loose. And we think of, you know, and then you see people reacting to Marilyn Manson in the 90s and you're going, oh, this is the same reaction, just different. This is the next gen of that same reaction. It's still a 9 on a 10 scale of freak out.
It's so crazy, Hal. I'm going to leave you with this. I know you're running out of time.
Yeah.
We were playing volleyball out here in one of the big parks on Sunday. I was about 7 or 8 o'clock at night at the big lights, and I just had my thing tuned to old 80s rap and old school rap.
Right.
And you remember Two Live Crew song "Me So Horny"?
Yeah.
Came on, and I remember how people were just losing their minds. Oh my God, how could someone ever make something like this?
Yeah.
And I'm listening to this song with my 2017 ears, and I'm thinking to myself, this song is tame compared to what's on regular radio right now that no one blinks.
This is tame based on what the president tweets. Think about that for a second. The president, we have tape of the president saying that without humor. Yep. You know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
You know what I mean? Those guys were at least being overtly provocative. They were intentional. Yeah. Two Live Crew was about being provocative in that thing. So I appreciate the call. We're at the tail end of the show. Always love it, and thanks for joining us on the Happy Ending because it's always terrific. Take care of yourselves, and we'll talk to you very soon. I have no doubt. And we've got only a minute left, so I want to talk about the. And this is indicative. Give everybody a little bit of perspective, but also feel good about this. German Parliament has approved same-sex marriage. Yeah, and by the way, why Germans are uptight about anything? I mean, all of their everything sexual coming out of Germany looks like something we would object to. Even the LGBT community in the United States is like, that's a little uptight for me. That's really weird. That's a little freaky. Does everything have to have a ball gag? Does everyone have to wear a bridle? Or why do I have a bit in my mouth? This is a marriage ceremony. So the Germans have always been a bit strange in this, you know, on how they do this. But the German Parliament has legalized it. It's a great moment forward. But guess what? Angela Merkel is voting against it.
Yep.
And remind yourself that the struggle continues and that humanity is on this road. We're not special in this country. Everybody has to go through the crazy leader world, and we all make these steps time and time again. You know, Germany is just legalizing same-sex marriage years after we did, and they had Hitler running the place at one point. Honestly, we can recover and we can bring back the quality and dignity of this country, and it means loving your fellow citizens. I love you guys. I love you, Johnny Million. I love you, Lady B. I love you, callers. We'll see you next time. Bye. All right. Thanks, Johnny. Thanks, Lady B. Love you guys. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Hi. Hi, everybody. How you doing? Sorry about all the echoing at the beginning and all that kind of crazy stuff. Apparently lightning struck the board in Chicago or something a while back. It was just nutty. Merkel changed her position. Oh, now I find out right at the end. Is probably triangulating for re-election. That's entirely possible. I don't know how she votes against it and then is against Trump and any of these kind of things. Like, I don't buy it. And I know she's a conservative candidate in her country, but even then it was like, pfft. Yeah. I still think, are we doing 3 hours? No, actually we're not, because I'm visiting relatives and Cam and everybody are waiting for me, and we're all going to go over to my aunt's house and have what Camden calls a feast. He likes it when we go over and they basically just have this layout of finger foods, and he calls it, can we go over and have a feast? are we going to have a feast? So we're having a feast over at my aunt's house, which, by the way, is like the nightmare snack horror. Like, you know, it's like chocolate chip cookies, celery and dill dip, like baby carrots from the bag. It's lovely. It's just ambrosia salad. All the things you're like, oh, grandma's laid out some snack foods for us. You know, like, oh, some iceberg lettuce. Yes, tonight we feast in hell. So yeah, but yeah. So yeah. I do like the conversation that happened at the end, and I don't think we've had that before, which is the outsized way that the right-wing whites in this country have a higher... No, she's not. My aunt is not. Where the right-wing whites in this country, by no accident, have an outsized voter representation in this country, and I think that's pretty obvious when you look at, you know, especially, you know, in case of the Senate, you know, and the volume of human beings, because it was laid out that each state should represent, you know, a certain number of people or whatever. This is an interesting case to be made that you know, for splitting the big states up, you know, into doubling them. Again, the right won't let that happen, because what ultimately that means is that, you know, the people themselves have will have more representation, that the big population centers will actually have more representation, and that's a volume of human beings, and it's a diverse population, and that's the last thing they want. So there's a reason to believe that won't happen for a very long time, until, you know, we're attacked by aliens or something like that. There's a big unifying force that occurs in the country, right? Yeah. But if you look at, like, Paul Weyrich and the whole, you know, goo-goo syndrome conversation, yeah, the California split I've heard about, where they actually have been trying it, is the two-state. The secession one was actually put forward by a Russian front group, actually, which that was uncovered fairly quickly. But yeah, so thank you guys, and thanks, Billy, by the way, for your donation. Saw that as well. So thank you, Donna and Sean and Natalie and Billy, for contributing to the super chat today. Awesome, and thank you guys for both join, you know, like, just being here to be in this conversation. I appreciate it. Are we getting a lot of, like, weird little jump-ins, little troll action, which is good. I'm glad we get the troll action. It's good, because here's the thing. I think one of the things you'll get attacked on the most when you start trying to balance the conversation out and say, okay, we need to join together as a country, even if we disagree, and all those kind of things. The people who want that to happen the least are the people who will benefit from the division, and that's Russia. So that's one of the reasons why the Macedonian hackers and all that kind of stuff were trying to drive a wedge between the Hillary and Bernie voters, why they were trying to drive the conservative Republicans versus the kind of wackadoodle version, while they were trying to elevate one side and diminish the other. They're not going to just do it here. So is that why the Goo Goo Dolls chose that name, Good Government? Yeah. Yeah, the trolls are nice sparring partners. Hey, Ginger, how are you? Didn't see what stops he posted that got him or her banned. And neither. Carl was quick with that troll trigger. I know, it's solid. One called Jackson. Yeah. I doubt it. Yeah. That's some super weird wishful thinking. I agree, Tom. That's right. The divide and conquer strategy is the basis of right-wing power in America. So how do you do it, though? How do you combat them? You refuse to buy into that part of it, even when it's uncomfortable. That's what I'm saying. And like I said, and like Carl in Nashville was pointing this out, and was, it's like he gets it. There's a ton of these people who, they're the racist ones who never come out of the hills, but there's also the people who, like, even if they don't like you, they would run to your burning car and pull you out, even if it's for their own sense of goodness. And they're a different breed of people, and they're reachable, and they may never believe that you're equal, but they won't. At a certain point, they can agree to treat you equally, and that's a start, and it has to be the start. So, and people can think what they will of that, but I just think it's necessary. And believe me, I'm one for mockery as the great weapon of choice. But I can't. Yes, a burgundy velvet rope and a giant celery stalk. That's the way to do it, King David Lane. Yes, and thank you, Natalie, so much. Why do they hate inclusive democracy? Well, that's an easy one, because there are a lot of resources and a lot of money to be made in this country, and the more they can have to themselves, the better. The more people involved in it, it's the same reason you don't want anybody in the market with you. If somebody's putting checks and balances or trying to stop you while you're trying to divide the country up into, by resource, by getting, owning pieces of it, you want to buy private land, public lands, all that kind of stuff. There's no benefit, there's no upside to you voting or having to deal with another congressperson or another senator that asks them questions or helps stop this. That's why they're not for inclusive democracy. No one in a position of power is ultimately seeking to broaden the base around them. I had this conversation in terms of I think the WGA, the Writers Guild of America, it should be the easiest place to argue for diversity. And to my mind, they're doing next to nothing. Not that they can really push much, but as far as giving minority and female writers a shot or developing them or giving them ways to get them, I don't know of anything that's going on there. I may be wrong, but they certainly aren't making overt things about it. And writers' rooms, when you're working at a network, there's 8 or 10 writers there, and you can arguably say that we're working on a script together. It would be good to have different voices to bounce off of, that have different life experiences to work on these scripts, rather than the same, all of one type, right? That an all-white writing room on a show, or an all-black writing room on a show, or an all-male or an all-female thing isn't good when you're creating characters that will involve anyone else of any other stripe, because it's just diversity seems to make the most sense, especially in group writing situations. You can't do much about an individual writing their own script. That's them. That's their decision. But in writing rooms, which is how most series are made, for example, there's no real move for diversity or pushing that in terms of there are in terms of execs and people doing it themselves, but there's not from the union. The DGA is doing a ton of work in that way, and so is SAG and AFTRA. But I got news for you. There's no actor of any ilk that wants any other person competing with them for another job. So there's no intrinsic desire for diversity when you're competing with other people for a single job. There just isn't. People can like the idea in the abstract, they can be not against it, but when it comes down to it, they don't need, the scariest thing for an actor. Let's take a role for a black actor that is suddenly changed to all ethnicities. The black actors who are going in on that aren't happy about that experience, because it just means more people to compete with. It's not because they're against other people of other races having the job. And that applies to everybody, because it's a single job. You don't co-act with diversity is for another actor. Let them play that other part. But I don't want diversity in the role I'm trying to get. I want the type I play to get the job. That's true of everybody. I don't care what anybody says. It doesn't make any sense, because it's a visual-based medium. It's based on an idea. It's based on presentation. So if your character is open to all ethnicities all the time, it's not like you feel like you're competing against, it should be open and inclusive. You're just like, oh great, more actors I'm competing against right now. I used to just have to worry about the men under 60 over 20. That's now it's everybody, right? That's the idea. So, as much as you might be open to the idea of inclusion, you're not looking forward to it when it happens. Same thing with directing. Directing is a one-person job. Directors can be in the abstract for other, I think it's lovely that there are directors of other races and ethnicities, secular, but I don't want to hear about them. I don't want to compete with, that just means more people to compete with, period. So it's ironic that the two unions that are where the members have the least impetus for diversity because it's a singular based job. You're hired based on you, not on your individuality, not on your collectivist experience, are doing a lot of great work. But the group that is supposed to be diversity-based writing, which is about creating the perspective from the ground up, out of nowhere, isn't. Yeah, bye, Nat. Thank you. Have a happy 4th too. Cheers. See ya. And so I think a lot of these people, they're not that kind of racist that they're like, they hate Mexicans. They're like, I don't want to have to compete with anybody else for a job. And if I can notch one person out, it's people who shouldn't be here because they're not here legally. And they jump right to that. So they're not xenophobic about these people because they don't really care culturally about them at all. It's not like they won't go to a Mexican restaurant and eat, or watch Jessica Alba in a movie or something because they can't stand the idea that someone is of a Hispanic or Mexican heritage. That would be xenophobia. What they hate is, oh great, another person taking my job, and this person will work under the table and not pay any taxes, and of course they're going to get hired over me. That's where they come. So, yeah. Where I'm on the voice actors versus the gaming industry strike, I'm for it, and I think they should hold out as long as possible. The gaming industry makes more money than movies right now. And talk about diversity. The voice actors are a hugely diverse group. They play across all, because whatever your voice fits, you can do it, so it's fantastic. Women can do men's voices, men can do women's voices. You create the abstract characters that aren't human at all can be anyone. It's a great thing because people can really go in and just define, as long as they can make a creative voice. And there's a couple of women in the voiceover community who are killing it, You can't really tell us yet. Well, that's awesome, Billy. Congratulations. Tell her I said congrats and keep at it. And yeah. We don't explore the idea of how competition is structured and why, but that's just me. Right. But the point is, nobody who's competing regularly for a job in a hustle-like industry is ever really wanting... I did a series called Tack and the Power of Juju, by the way. And I did Bees and Dr. Doolittle too, and I did all kinds of little stuff like that. And I'm doing a new cartoon called Milo Murphy's Law that's coming out soon. Did the first episode, recorded it last week with Weird Al. So that's coming out soon. But if anybody who's competing with another, on an individual level, especially if the job is one-to-one, it's not like working on a factory floor where you just you know what you're doing is the same as what everybody else is doing. Would you like to learn your German voice from there? Oh yeah, I've seen it. Yeah, thanks, Mona. Yeah. Is no one who hustles wants to compete with anybody else. That's great, Billy. Congrats. That's terrific. No person who hustles for a living. You're not going to see real estate agents pushing for diversity in the real estate agent market because they're selling on a one-to-one. They don't want anybody else. If there were no other real estate agents in the world, they would be happy. So the idea that they would be for diversity in it is ridiculous, quite frankly. And arguing for diversity in that is ridiculous to them. You would fall on deaf ears. It's silly. It's not because, again, a lot of these people just feel cornered, broken, and nobody's listening. And they're willing to give up parts of their own moral failing just to keep from starving to death or watching another kid die from an overdose. Awesome, Julie. Well, maybe we'll coordinate. I'll try to be there at the same time because I haven't been to China in a bit and I need to go back. So, anyways, that's my feeling about diversity. And again, I'm not a big fan of pushing for equality. I believe in heroes. I believe you have a much stronger connection when you recognize that there are people of every stripe to aspire to be and look up to. And that when you argue for equality, most of the people you're arguing with who need to have a conversation about equality, most of those people think most people suck. And so you can go, hey, gay people just like everybody else, they should be equal. And you're like, well, everybody else sucks. Yeah. King David Lane. Well, that wasn't the Bible that said that. That was Shakespeare's rewrite of the Bible that said that under, what was his name? Oh yeah, King David. Oh no, it was James. Fear of competition is why the right-wing powers be fear education. That's exactly right. That's right. That's why, what's frightening if you're Fred Trump is that your son Donald would have to compete with people who are actually skilled and won't have a leg up. That's why they want the quote-unquote death tax or the property, the inheritance tax to go away. And I got news for you. I think one of the reasons why you try to earn a living is to pass it on to your children. So I'm not a huge fan of a massive inheritance tax in and of itself. I think, especially if you pass the business along, you should be able to carry that business. If you sell it or get out in 5 years, you should, or less. Then the taxes should be through the roof. But the idea of helping people carry businesses throughout a family is a very important way of keeping outside multinationals from moving in and sideswiping, because I think one of the downsides of the inheritance tax, for example, was that family businesses get hit by it, but passing on corporate charters from one to the other doesn't hurt a multinational. So they can create paper corporations that have funded money from outside the country that they say is venture capital, but it isn't. So, one of the, keeping, isn't it a $5 million limit on the corporate tax? Yeah, but that's usually right at the window of stability. $5 million, one of the reasons that John McCain said you're rich in this country if you have $5 million is because you can have a middle class income just living off the interest at that point, and then you can be an investor. That's why that's the $5 million. It used to be way lower. It used to be you could, in the 60s if it was a $500,000, but the dollar is like the yen at this point, or it takes 40,000 yen to buy a sandwich, right? I actually think it should be 20 because the foundational thing on a franchise that might have 10 of them is much bigger than that. I don't think you have to do away with it. I agree, but I do think the limit should rise to 10 or arguably $20 million, because if you have the foundational, like each business's worth, when they become suspicious, when they don't like the numbers, the numbers were fake before, but they're not fake now, right? That's that's the big difference. If you're saying there's no difference between the parties, the one thing the Democrats will do is go, hey, the nonpartisan budget office says, the CBO says we got to fix this, so we got to go back and fix it. Whereas the Republicans go, that's bullcrap. And I am sympathetic with people who make millions of dollars. I'm not necessarily against them, and I think a lot of them are people who've sought and fought hard to get ahead of the game and all that kind of stuff, and then a lot of them get sideswiped by the Exxon Valdez kind of multinational corporations. I mean, arguably, there are a lot of your mom and pop stores that get wiped out by Walmart were effectively millionaires, but they weren't anchored. They had $1 million net worth, or they had $2 million net worth, but they had a debt structure and they were running a business, and they were, so this is it's again, sympathy and empathy is the work of being a progressive. It doesn't mean you let them get away with it, but basically what we're giving is to get at the 1% or our disdain for the 1%. We strike the upper 40%, and then we wonder why we don't have a middle class anymore. Because the only people who are safe from those taxes and those protections are the people who are way beyond it, who've already moved their stuff out of the country, and everybody else is getting, dragged down because they shouldn't have anything. It's not. And again, this is like a centrist Democratic argument. This is the part that gets them excluded. That there are criminal bankers, and then there are banks, and you can't just kind of go, well, all banks are evil, or whatever. Well, then, if you got a checking account, why are you participating in evil? It's just silly. At a certain point, you have to go, we have a responsibility to think deeper than that. Yes, I have, Ginger, and I'm very impressed. Anyways, I got to run, guys. You guys are awesome. Be well. Take care of yourselves. Thank you for getting through the echo with me. You guys were terrific. And this is a good conversation to have. I'm glad that we have it, but it has to be on balance, and we can't just be as knee-jerk as the other side, or we're no better in a lot of ways. It's just important, And there are a lot of good, rich people who dedicate a lot of their money and their worth. The WCPT is owned by a millionaire. He protects it from being wiped out. He's the only reason it exists. If he hadn't purchased it and kept it afloat before I joined, and he's had it for years, it would have been bought up by Bain Capital ages ago through money from overseas and decimated, and they'd be running Republican propaganda. So there you go. Anyways, take care, guys. We'll see you next time. Adore you. Bye.